Today's video is all about the pros and cons of exclusively pumping. So before we get into the actual pros and cons, I wanted to just give a little bit of a backstory as to why I chose to exclusively pump. Or I didn't really choose, it kind of chose me. So what happened was my baby girl, when she was sent home from the hospital, the next day at our first pediatrician appointment, they had said that her bilirubin was through the roof. We had to go back to the hospital. She was severely jaundiced and she had to go under the UV lights for 24 hours. So if I can, I'll put in some pictures here. Okay, so she was under the UV lights for 24 hours, and during that time, the pediatrician, or the pediatric nurses, actually told me the reason that she became so jaundiced was because she wasn't getting enough milk. Now, I knew she wasn't getting enough milk because every time I put her onto the breast, she would fall asleep. It didn't matter if we scratched her back, took all of her clothing off, put a cold rag on the back of her neck, she was going to fall asleep. She was latching, but it was also very painful, and it just wasn't right. Unfortunately, I had a very, very negative experience with my lactation consultants at the hospital. That was the only negative experience that I had throughout my entire labor and delivery, and I actually talk a little bit about that in my birth story video. So if you haven't watched that video, make sure you go ahead and watch that one. But you know, all in all, she is still getting my breast milk, and I'm very thankful for that. But it wasn't until I had to go back into the hospital and I was talking to the pediatric nurses, and they said, "Are you opposed to supplementing? Are you opposed to pumping? Talk to me, because as of now, your baby isn't getting what she needs." I was completely on board with pumping, especially in the beginning, to make sure that she's actually getting enough. I knew that my milk had come in. I was actually at Target before I was at Target, and it was before we were sent back to the hospital. I was getting some Starbucks, and all of a sudden I was like, oh my God, my boobs. They killed me, and I knew in that moment that my milk had officially transitioned from just colostrum to my full milk supply. So with that, I was like, okay, I've got the milk. I need to pump. I need to figure out a way to feed my baby, because breastfeeding was very, very important to me. So with all that, the pediatric nurses were fantastic. They taught me how to use the pump. They helped me with this, figure out a schedule. They were really the ones who actually taught me all about pumping and the benefits of pumping. So there's even more to this, but because I don't want to bore you with the details, basically the reason why I stuck to exclusively pumping versus trying to get her latched back on the breast, which I did try. I did try a few times. It was something that I really wanted, but it just didn't happen for me because she did get used to the bottle, and things became easier because I was exclusively pumping. I knew I was going to be going back to work. I work roughly 45 hours a week. I knew I'd be having to pump while I was at work, so I kind of just got in the flow of that versus trying to get her to latch, because it just wasn't working. So with that, let's hop into the pros and cons. I have a full list right here that I'm going to go over. So I want to start with the pros. The first pro that I actually have on here is that, okay, I'll start with this one. It helps you, if you exclusively pump, because breastfeeding is supply and demand, you are able to build up a freezer stash. I am almost 8 months postpartum, and I'm actually just starting to wean off of pumping, and I have enough breast milk to last Charlie until she's about 15 months old. I pump roughly 60 to 65 ounces a day, and she eats anywhere from 23 to 25 ounces. So I am getting a lot of extra milk that I'm able to store and freeze right away that she'll be able to use for a very long time to come. So it's a huge benefit. You're able to build up a supply. I'm kind of emotionally attached to pumping and to giving her my breast milk still, so that is why I even lasted this long pumping. But I'm starting to wean. I'm now only pumping 4 times a day, and that's only been going on for about a week. So now I pump about 55 ounces a day. So I'm slowly cutting back. So it's a huge benefit to be able to have a freezer stash. I will say though, with that, and this is kind of one of my cons, we have four freezers full of breast milk. So that has been a struggle. My parents have a chest freezer that is full of breast milk. It's been taking over our lives. So again, there's pros and cons to breastfeeding. My second pro is, you know how much the baby is getting. I know I hear from a lot of first-time moms who actually ask me about breastfeeding or pumping and things like that. And one thing I always say if they feel like they're struggling is, it doesn't hurt to pump. You have about 48 hours before the baby actually gets used to the bottle nipple versus your nipple. So if you take a day and exclusively pump, see how much that you're producing, you'll be able, that is a huge benefit. You're actually able to see how much you're producing, how much the baby is getting, when they're stopping. So you know when they're satisfied, then you'll get a feel for your breasts and how much you're making. It's a huge benefit. So that put me at ease a lot. I always knew that Charlie was getting the right amount of breast milk, and like I knew that she was satisfied. So that, I would have to say, that takes the cake. That was a huge thing that encouraged me to keep going. And third, my last pro that I'm going to talk about in this video is, others can feed your baby. This is a huge pro. When you have to wake up every 2 to 3 hours the first month or so to feed the baby, and you're exhausted, yes, you have to wake up and you can pump, but you don't have to pump, feed the baby. My husband, he was back at work and he was still super helpful. We would wake up around midnight, like 4 and then 7, and he would feed her at 1 or 2 of those feeds in the middle of the night while I pumped, and I actually would set an alarm and fall asleep while I was pumping. So I was still getting that rest that I needed. He was able to feed her, he would change her, burp her, and put her right back in her bassinet. And all I had to do was pump. And when I would feed her, and then pump too, because sometimes I would do that, he would change her and clean out my pump gear. So then we were both back in bed within 25 minutes versus 45 minutes. So when other people can feed the baby, it's so beneficial. It's also beneficial to that mental health, piece that we talk about during our postpartum period of, one thing that I really enjoyed was going to the gym. It's still something that I love to do, although I don't really get to go to the gym. Working out in general is my favorite. So right now I work out at home, but that's another topic. And when I was on maternity leave, I actually would, my aunt lives down the street, I would drop her off for an hour and I would go to the gym, and I wouldn't have to worry about her needing me because my boob wasn't available to her. It was a huge comfort to know I can go to the gym, I can take the time that I need, and if she gets hungry, she has the milk, she has my milk, and someone else is able to feed her. I know how much she's getting, and it really was peace of mind. I love that exclusively pumping gave me the ability to take a break when I needed it, that if Chris and I wanted to go out on a Friday night, that my parents had enough milk and they knew how much she was getting, and that I didn't have to worry about being right there with her. So I think it really helped with the mental health healing aspect of postpartum. Okay, so I also have 3 cons that I want to talk about. The first one being an oversupply. Now, I know what you're probably thinking, especially if you're a mama out there who is struggling with breastfeeding in general or an undersupply, not making enough. While I am so grateful that I have an oversupply or that I have enough, an oversupply comes with its own challenges as well. I will tell you, it is very uncomfortable. I had mastitis 4 times within 7.5 months. And then on top of that, I also had 2 times where I had clogged ducts. So there has only been 1 month during my postpartum period that I haven't had issues with my breasts being engorged or in pain, mastitis, a clogged duct, something along those lines. So, and that is very, very painful. Mastitis is basically like, honestly, people might disagree with me, but I think it is worse than labor pains. It is from head to toe, you're in pain. It's flu-like symptoms. It is awful. And I dealt with that 4 times. So it definitely comes with its own challenges. Obviously, I've learned different ways to ease that, which have been helpful. But at the same time, having an oversupply does come with its own challenges. So that is one con to exclusively pumping, because since it is supply and demand, my body thinks I need to produce enough milk for 2 to 3 babies. And obviously I don't, and having that oversupply is awesome. But at the same time, it can get very uncomfortable. I also have to still sleep with a bra on. I'm very sensitive. So like I said, it comes with its cons as well. Also, my breasts have stretched so much that I have stretch marks, and I also went up 3 cup sizes since becoming pregnant and now breastfeeding. So lots of changes, and I would definitely say that is a con. Okay, my second con would be lugging that stupid pump everywhere I go. I lug that pump everywhere. If I'm going to my parents, if I'm going shopping, if Chris and I are going on a date and I have to pump at 6 o'clock, and then I'm hopping in his truck and I'm plugging into the car outlet and I'm pumping there. So lugging that pump everywhere gets very, very, very frustrating. Totally worth it, but definitely frustrating. And the last thing, and I would say the number one con to exclusively pumping, is the time commitment. It is a huge time commitment. When I first started pumping, I was pumping every 2 to 3 hours to match her schedule. That also is a reason that I was able to build up my supply. But for the past, I want to say, from month 2.5 to just about a week ago, I have been pumping 5 times a day at 6 a.m., 10 a.m., 2 p.m., 6 p.m., and 10 p.m. for 20 minutes. That is basically every 4 hours. It is a huge time commitment. Luckily, when I'm at work, I have that time where I can use the mother's room. But still, I get home from work, I have to sit and I have to pump. Overall, it's just a huge time commitment, but I will say I was very, very determined to breastfeed, whatever that meant, whether that was exclusively pumping, getting her to latch, which unfortunately failed for me. I wanted to breastfeed. It was very important to me. It is not important to everybody. I don't give a crap how you feed your baby. A fed baby is a happy baby, and I will stick to that. It's just something that was very important for me, was breastfeeding. So I was going to do whatever it took to continue to do that, at least for her first year of life. The time commitment is huge, and after talking to other mamas, that's actually one of the number one reasons that they actually quit. So what I used for my motivation was I wanted to breastfeed. That's truly what it was. I did have a fantastic support system. My husband was extremely supportive. My entire family was supportive. My work is fantastic. They still to this day are like, you breastfeed as long as you need to, use that mother's room as long as you need to. So I have had support across the board with my breastfeeding journey, which is huge. But if you don't have that, it makes it a lot more complicated. So it is a time commitment, but to me, it was worth it. All right, so those are my 3 pros and my 3 cons. I could talk about this topic forever. I am going to do a little bit more of a deeper dive into exclusively pumping and things like that, my tips and tricks and things that I've used to be successful with it. But for now, for this video, I wanted to stick to the pros and cons. I wanted to give that information to you so you could make the decision on your breastfeeding journey if exclusively pumping is in the cards for you. Like I said, it's not for everybody, but it's an amazing option, especially nowadays. I'm so grateful that I had the option to still be able to breastfeed even though she wasn't on the boob. One question I do want to answer though in this video, which I get a lot, is will you do this for future children? My goal for my future children is to breastfeed. So if I'm able to, great. If I have a baby that latches, great. In a perfect world, I would love to be able to do both, which, to be honest, I didn't even know that was a possibility. I was just in this land of new motherhood, just trying to make sure that she had my breast milk. But knowing what I know now and all of the research that I've done, I know that I can do both. So I will be pumping to build up a supply with my next child, but I'm very determined to get them on the boob. So that is it for this video. I hope that you enjoyed it. This is probably one of the topics that I get asked about most, is breastfeeding and pumping and all of that stuff. Let me know what you want to see on this topic. I already have a few ideas, but if you have any specific questions, feel free to DM me on Instagram, ask them in the comments. I love interacting with you guys. I've definitely seen an uptick in my DMs on Instagram, and I love it. I love, love, love it. I love to talk about all things motherhood, which is why I made this channel in the first place. So be sure to comment below, to like, share. God bless you and your family. Remember to be kind to yourself and to others. And I will see you in my next video. Bye.